A special thank you to Jen Hallwell and Company for sponsoring this week's episode. Welcome to the place where we inspire growth through powerful stories of transformation. I am your host and artist, Jessica James, and this is the I Empower Podcast. In this week's episode, we sit down with Michelle Smith, also known as Recovery is the New Black on Instagram. In this episode, Michelle bravely shares her powerful story of addiction, including her battles and near-fatal experiences with alcohol, but also how getting sober has transformed her life. We dive deep into why it's important to share our stories of recovery and how healing out loud can help encourage and inspire others. So if you are in recovery, sober curious, or simply looking to gain insight on addiction, this episode is a must listen. Let's jump right to it. Gosh, Michelle, thank you so much for being on today. You are also known on Instagram as Recovery is the New Black, and your platform is just incredible. And you're just educating us on the importance of why we should kick the booze, but also, why recovery is so important for overall wellness.
Thank you so much for having me. So I'm Michelle. I'm the founder of Recovery is the New Black, which is a digital community for women who are living or exploring an alcohol-free life. And so the idea behind all of this kind of stemmed from partially my own personal experience and journey. And the other part is I have a huge background working for the Department of Corrections. So I'm sure most of us have seen the Orange is the New Black.
Yeah.
So I took kind of that spin on.
I love that.
Yes. And
That's great.
Everything is like the new black, trends for clothes and colors and ideas. And it's we can have this idea that it can be really cool to explore or potentially live an alcohol-free life and love it.
Yeah,
right?
You just gave me cold chills. Oh my gosh. I love that.
Yeah. And so it can be this new really cool thing that people are just because we hear people say, I go to the gym and I take care of myself and I eat organic and I read my kids' labels. But it's at the end of the day, we're always going to be unhealthy if we drink a bottle of wine to wind down. Right?
Ah, yes.
Yeah. And so, my personal experience is I never really had a problem with alcohol growing up. In college, I could ditch the booze fine. I knew I had a predisposition to alcoholism, so I really took that opportunity to steer clear. So, what I really ended up doing was just, okay, I'm going to stay away from this. This isn't adding value to my life. And so I've seen this really disrupt my family dynamic. And so, again, stayed clear of it. Had my first child, and I was introduced to the mommy juice culture. And it was, I would say, a very interesting time for my predisposition to alcoholism to really flourish.
Mm-hmm.
The moment I became a mom, I became so susceptible and vulnerable to so many things, and alcohol happened to become one of them. And at that same time, I lost my mother as I was becoming a mother. My husband was deploying to war. I started having physical health issues. I had my first stroke. I was undiagnosed at the time with postpartum depression, wondering why I can't get myself out of this rut. I'm living this lifestyle that I have dreamed of, that I had worked so hard to build, and I wasn't happy. I just wanted to escape all of it. I really fell down this culture of wine helps. Motherhood is hard, and wine will help me get through the really hard parts of motherhood. And so the more I drank, the more people I associated with that drank. And we had this unwritten rule, really, that we can go ahead and dump Baileys in our coffee and push our stroller through the mall or the park. And it's just acceptable. And when you do that so much, these unhealthy ways of coping eventually took over my life to where I'm feeling sad, so I'm going to drink.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling happy, so I'm going to drink. And when you do that constantly, you notice that all of your other coping tools go out the window because this one's so much easier, convenient. Everyone's doing it. It's relatively cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And when you keep going back to an addictive substance, you're eventually going to become addicted. And that's what I teach people being an alcohol and drug counselor. I know what to do and what not to do. But I started at one point in my life not practicing what I was preaching. And eventually the alcohol dependence, over time, you don't think it's ever going to happen to you. You're an exception to the rule. And eventually it was a choice until it became a full blown on addiction.
Yeah. I think it's so important that you're highlighting that because, you hear all the time, oh, well, a glass of wine with your dinner is healthy for you. It's okay to have that, that wine or that drink at the end of the day. You've had a rough day and you just want to like take the edge off. And so it's so interesting that you're saying that to me because it's literally like a gateway into being, you know, potentially addicted to the substance because I think a lot of people don't think that they could ever be addicted to something like this if they're, because you just think of like this, like, I have to have it all the time. And so, and you mentioning putting it in the coffee and things like that. That's so, I never would have thought of that as being an issue.
Me neither. I never thought I would ever get so creative and sneaky and dishonest ever in my life. Like it's mind blowing what people are capable of doing when they're addicted to something that's so unhealthy that it literally takes over their soul. And I've seen this happen with so many different types of, mind altering chemicals. But
Mm-hmm.
it's just this one thing that it's like, you just don't get it until you're like in it and it like hijacks your soul. And it's like, I would go into the rooms of AA early on and I'd say, you guys are freaking nuts.
Yeah.
I I am so far not there yet that you guys are terrifying me. And
Yeah.
so I saw the differences, not the similarities. And so I was like, I gotta go. Like, I'm not there yet. And I'm like, Michelle, why are you waiting for these yets? Why are you waiting for something so bad to happen before you take a look at your relationship with alcohol? And that's just where a lot of us are in this boozy culture that I talk about. We normalize it, we glamorize it. It is an issue, right? And so it's like you just wait for that reason to have to stop. You're either pregnant or you're an alcoholic if you're not drinking and consuming around everybody else who is. And so it's such a backwards culture in the fact that something's wrong with you if you are not drinking. And then you tap out when you have a problem. And the judgment and the jokes and the stigma, it's just so debilitating to people who are truly sober curious or who know that they really do have a problem because alcohol is not one of those things that just for the health of it, I'm going to drink red wine. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's healthy, like you said. And it's like, eat some damn blueberries and some dark chocolate. It's like, there's your
Yeah.
antioxidants.
Mm.
Yes. Quit using
Yeah.
that as an excuse.
Yeah, and I think because a lot of times, like you mentioned, society almost becomes an enabler. Oh, well, my doctor said that it's okay for me to have a glass of wine. Well, maybe your doctor doesn't know that, you have the potential of, having addictive behavior. I think that plays a lot of into that. You had mentioned that before that you were predispositioned to alcohol, alcoholism. So, growing up, were you exposed to a lot of alcohol? Because I've heard, same thing with smoking cigarettes and obviously drugs. If you do them as an adult and your children are in that environment, I can't remember what the percentages were, but I mean, exponentially more likely to later on in life be a cigarette smoker if your parents smoke cigarettes, drink alcohol if your parents drank alcohol, or especially if they were alcoholics. So can you tell me what that was like for you growing up?
Yeah, my mother never touched drugs or alcohol, cigarettes, none of that. My father, on the other hand, was a severe alcoholic. He was a very big workaholic. He was a physician and spent a lot of time just helping others and
Uh-huh.
obviously being of service. And, there's always those statistics that'll show you with a high increase in professional burnout leads to substances and, other disorders as well. But, I really went through life saying, I have the perfect example of what not to be, as opposed to saying, I didn't know any different. I fell into the family gene
Uh-huh.
and here I am. I'm part of the family. And so there was a lot of alcoholism in my father's side of the family and actually my mother's side of the family, big Catholic family that was just, that's what we did. And it was a
Uh-huh.
church and it was just the thing we did. So, I had 50-50, 0% on my mom's side, a lot on my father's side. And so I like to say that I didn't want to poke the bear. I knew in hibernation was my potential disease. And I saw the destruction on very powerful, educated, strong people. I would watch them go down And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be that. I just had the empowerment of I'm going to do something different. Like I'm going to break this curse and show people that we don't have to drink. And I did that until I was nearly the end of my 30s. And I thought, oh, I'm past. I'm past this. There's no way it's going to happen. Well, I wasn't poking the bear, right? I
Yeah.
wasn't putting myself up in this situation to be tempted or to be triggered. And it took a few years, and that thing was awake and running rampant through my life.
Wow. And so did you have like an aha moment where you were just like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Something has to change. You know, what was that moment? And then what was your first step? Like, I know that I have been like sober curious. I've had a few moments in my past where I've just like got super shit faced and was horrible to my husband, then boyfriend. And
Yep.
for me, it was just one of those situations where I was just like, you know what, like it had happened like back to back to back. And then I was like, I'm going to end up losing this guy that is incredible if I don't stop drinking. Now, I wasn't the type of person that would drink at home all the time, but when I went out,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone's drinking, having a good time, like I just didn't know my limit, and so I would get like, oh. And so for me, being that sober curious, like now it's like one of those situations where I'm just like, I don't want to buy a drink unless I'm going to get a buzz, and if I get a buzz, then I'm going to want more, and then I'm not going to know when I'm done, and then here we are, I'm hungover the next day, and potential. So what would be your advice? And tell me your aha moment, and then what would be your advice for someone that is sober curious?
Yes. Oh my gosh. That was totally me too. I would just like go out as long as you put all these rules and you're like, well, I don't drink at home. I don't drink in
Yeah.
secret. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, but it's like you just said, you got shit faced. Like, do you drink to get shit faced or do you drink because you like the taste of it?
Right.
Are you drinking because you're grieving? Are you drinking because you don't like to go to this holiday event party of your work and
Yep.
you have to show face? Like, so it's like I think it's really important to like think about why are we doing what we're doing and why are we ingesting a mind altering chemical that is destroying us from the inside out. I had so many aha moments, so many, and it was like one after another after another after another. It's like, okay, Michelle, you're in the hospital at this point. To back up a few moments at least, it was small people would like leave comments. My husband would say, Michelle, do you remember what you did last night? And I'd look at him and say, I have no clue.
Wow.
And it started out kind of like that, paying the babysitter if we went on a date night, but not really remembering, how much I paid, if I really honestly paid, and just little things like that, like feeling hungover, not wanting to get out of bed. But eventually I just mustered through because we had our fun on the weekend and it was over, and I just continued to keep moving forward. And so, I started to have little aha moments along the way when people who I loved started to say, wow, you really went out last night, and yeah, you were hilarious. And it was so great to see
Yeah.
you unwind, because when you get uptight and you're just like stuffy, it's like, okay, when you're chill, they see a different side of you.
Yeah.
And so there was a little bit, or a lot of those that really just for like sprinkled in through probably a couple of years until my first aha moment was ending up in the hospital with fatal alcohol poisoning.
Wow.
I started drinking at home because people were noticing and people were saying things. I was starting to say, I'm not asking for your opinion. I was resentful. I was protecting what was brewing of an addiction to say, you do you, don't worry about me. And the more people that would come and say something, the more hidden and secretive my drinking became, which is where people really get into trouble because there's no accountability, and addiction thrives in secrecy, isolation, and silence. And so the more I would sneakily do it, the more dependent I became on this. So it wasn't partying, going out at all. It
Wow.
was literally, yeah,
Yeah.
it was drinking a glass of wine while I'm making dinner. The kids are going nuts, the whole
Yeah.
song and dance. And so, I would have many, many more aha moments along the way. But you'd think waking up in the hospital with a 0.43 blood alcohol level would stop anybody in their tracks. It did for a while until it didn't anymore. And that's where we think about, oh, well, I have to hit a rock bottom to justify why I'm not going to drink. Well, what's your bottom? Is it death? Is it the hospital? Is it losing your job, your family, your kids? Like, we get to decide what that looks like. And for me, I didn't want to ever lose my children. And so after a few more aha moments of ending up in the hospital again, it was like Child Protective Services is investigating your case and you could potentially be at risk of losing your children. Is this really worth it, Michelle? And that, that really helped me get in line with, okay, let's get into a program. I ended up accepting the need for help and going to treatment. But looking back, it's like, why did I have to do all of that? Because I was strong, but I didn't have the confidence to tell people that I was struggling and that I need to pass on a drink or take sober curious breaks or challenges like we see today. I didn't have the strength and confidence because I didn't want to say no to it because I wanted to numb out.
Mm-hmm.
That's just where I was. And so I forgot your question, but it was something in regards to sober
Yeah.
curiosity, right?
Yeah. Like what's like someone that's like, okay, I just feel like I want to do this, but I don't want to be that weirdo. And I'm going to use air quotes because I don't think it's
Yes.
weird, but like we feel weird when we're at an event or somewhere and everyone around us is drinking and we know someone's going to offer us a drink. And if we say no, there's all these other things that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so like be it just, saying, I don't even want to face those. Like, how do you get the strength? Like, what would be your advice for someone that's like, okay, I feel like I need to change, but I don't know where to start?
Right. So if you don't know where to start and you're just, you're not like you waited for Michelle to get all kinds of crazy before she decided to make
Yeah.
a change. You don't have to get there and you shouldn't get there. Find the similarities, not the differences in other people who are choosing to be non-drinkers, right? We don't have to wait for this rock bottom, this horrible thing to happen that you have to rebuild your life like I did. Like these days are over. Don't freaking do it. And so if you're sober curious and you're like, where do I start? What do I do? Some people start with, I'm on antibiotics. I have a meeting in the morning. I'm the designated driver.
Yeah.
Any excuse, I'm a really honest person, except for that period of my time where I learned to be really dishonest to protect my disease.
Yeah.
But it's like, if that just feels okay, that says, I just want to push these people away for the day. They don't need to know my life story.
Right.
Just say that you're doing the fast or you're doing the Whole30, sober for October. Whatever you want to say, get to where you need to be, get out of that event, or just say, you know what, it's not adding value to my life. My gut hurts. I want to see if I can lose a few pounds, if I can get my face a little brighter. You can say my family struggles and there's this running in my family and I just don't want to fall into that.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't add value to my life. It can be as simple as, any of those reasons. Like it doesn't bring out the best in me.
Yeah.
I'm taking a break.
Yes.
There's
I
so
love
many
that.
different fun ways.
Yes, most definitely. And I think too, also what a really important thing is that, I want to highlight because I have friends that are sober. And as a friend and an ally to somebody that you want to be for the sober community, even if you don't necessarily know someone sober, like I think not being like, oh, why not? Just you should try that. Like that, if someone says no, that means no. So like we need to really try to like not pry and ask why. Like no just needs to be good enough.
Exactly. Does it matter?
Yeah.
No is a complete sentence. If I came over to your house for a barbecue and I had celiac disease and I had to eat certified gluten-free food, you would have no problem saying, Michelle, I have this extra spread for you. Like you get people's dietary restrictions.
Yes.
Alcohol should be no different. No, thank you is a complete sentence. And in this day and age, we should have enough brain smarts to understand that, we shouldn't just have all liquor out at an event, especially a 2-year-old birthday party. Like, that's the kind of trends we've started. Like, I'll go if there's booze. I'll go if there's wine or mimosas. Like, if you're going to have a holiday event, and this is even for just or any type of celebration, this goes for people who are sober curious or not. We're in this day and age where people are drinking for multiple reasons. It doesn't go down to alcoholism and pregnancy anymore. People are doing this for religious reasons. They're doing this for medical reasons, medication interactions. The list goes on and on to support somebody because of their health, that it doesn't even, again, matter. But have options and alternatives. Have seltzers, have water. Don't just have juice boxes and plant water. That's just silly. And so it's like have different options for people because you would be amazed at having, let's just say, even if you were to do like a mimosa bar, having it separate where people could pour the champagne at the end if they wanted to, but you would be amazed at the people who will grab a LaCroix or an iced tea or, an iced coffee other than the booze if you provide options. And that is what is so cool. And other ways to support sober curious people is podcasts. If you're wanting to listen to something, I always say a head full of sobriety. When you drink, it is never the same because you are hearing the science and the psychology behind why no amount of alcohol is good for you. And so if you continue to educate, look on Instagram for people, like me or other people that are living a sober life that are really having a great time, where I could never imagine my life without alcohol because my whole life was surrounded around alcohol that forever felt like a really long time. And so it's just that bite size. Today I'm going to do it because I want to show up and be the best to my kids. I want to wake up hangover free. Every day you add on to that, it gets pretty empowering to then say, you know what, I'm living a life that like I don't really want to escape because I'm going to be hitting that marathon. I have gained this promotion. That stuff's not as important to me as it once was, but when you're in the thick of it, it's really important. So surrounding yourself with people who are just like, wow, she can do it, I can do it. What is this doing to me? And when we start asking ourselves different questions like, is this adding value to my life? What is this going to cost me if I don't take a break? We don't need to ask ourselves, are we an alcoholic? Yes or no. And that by default means that we go to Alcoholics Anonymous or we continue to drink until it causes destruction to our life, right? And so
Yeah.
it's like,
if you're looking to buy or sell your home this year, I've got the girl for you. Jennifer Hollowell is the mastermind behind Jen Hollowell and Company and the sponsor of this week's episode. I have had the pleasure of getting to know Jen, and let me tell you, she is one of the most passionate and knowledgeable real estate agents I have ever met. With over 15 years of experience, Jen has helped countless families find their dream homes, and I am so grateful she is a part of this project. Jen has a background in marketing and customer service, so she knows exactly how to make the buying and selling process smooth and enjoyable for her clients. And with an eye for art and architecture, Jen is able to bring a unique perspective to each and every transaction. So if you're thinking about buying or selling your home, I highly recommend you reach out to Jen. And once again, a big thank you to Jen with Jen Hollowell and Company for sponsoring this week's episode.
sobriety is not a dirty word. It's a pretty cool, empowering word that I'm not going to ingest the same carcinogenic that I put into my gas tank to operate. That's what I'm choosing to do, is to honor her, my body, because she's going to honor me back in return and be so grateful that she doesn't have to work overtime because I'm ingesting this poison that is killing myself. No, thank you. I'm good. I'll drink some water. And I'm going to pack my own stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to depend on somebody else to have this. So if they say, oh, hey, would you like this drink? Oh, no, thank you. I brought my own.
Yes.
Always have that drink in your hand so no one has to offer it to you. Put it in a solo cup. No one's going to ask you. They're not going to care. They're drinking. As long as you're not drinking, they'll just drink it for you. They don't care. we think they care, but they don't.
They don't.
No.
I think it's so great that you said that. And then too, I want to touch again on what you said about sobriety. When I used to think of alcoholism, alcoholic, I used to envision getting in trouble, taking it to the extremes. And so, there are people that just don't like the way that they feel. Like me, I just don't like how I feel in the morning when I wake up. Yeah, a buzz feels good, but it doesn't usually stop there. It's like, I think it's just really important that we talk about the spectrum of sobriety and taking away that, word to make it think that, oh gosh, it's bad. So if someone says I'm sober or I'm sober curious, like, it doesn't necessarily mean that you had to, be a raging, getting in trouble, losing your license, going to jail type, ended up in the hospital, that there's a spectrum to it. And so owning that word sober and sobriety, I think, is important, that we just take away that negative feeling to it. I hope that's making sense. I feel like I'm like running in circles.
No, you were making so much sense.
Okay.
And that's the cool thing about this movement. If it's like one day alcohol is going to be looked at the same way cigarettes are.
Yes.
It really is. And it's like, I feel like it's this, the best way I can say it is like the alcohol industry, which is called like big alcohol. Mm-hmm. They had not tapped into a market. And this goes to just niching the moms for this particular scenario. But what it did was, is we have the football players and the beer and the Budweiser. We have the Scotch drinkers. We have this huge pool of women that are most vulnerable and susceptible, and we have not tapped into that market yet. And so they literally were preying on people with dropping all the things. We're walking billboards. They have skinny vodka and,
Yeah.
the White Claws or whatever that crap is. Like, that was way before my time. So I never
Yeah.
even tried those. I would have loved them, I'm sure. But it was like, all that stuff where it was like, we have these women. How do we get them? Well, you know what? They're all postpartum. They're all longing for connection. They're all depressed. What can bring them together? Now we have the t-shirts. Now we have the goofy jokes. We have the memes. We have the groups. Like, it just started this vulnerable, praying, disgusting marketing ploy, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so, but when you go back to like that spectrum of alcohol use disorder, it goes from mild to moderate to severe. So again, we don't say you're a quote unquote normie versus spectrum alcoholism. You live under a bridge. We've written you off. You're not adding any value to society. You clearly are a menace to society, where it's like, nope, like you said, I don't feel good. I don't like the way I operate. I'm going to take a look at this because people are getting more health conscious. Where, why am I waiting to self-destruct and tap out? Like, I don't like this crap. I don't want to hang. I can be a vegan. I can, marry who I want. I can vote for who I want. Like, this world is becoming, be individualized, and you can show up in whatever version on a day-to-day basis you want, and you should be loved and valued and appreciated for that person, right?
Yes.
And so, yeah, the Sober Curious movement is here, alive and well. And mocktails are in bars now. People are catching on to not just, all I have to offer you is plant water, tap water, a juice box, or Shirley Temple. Like, we have so many rad, alternatives these days where it's like, do it for the health of it. We're learning what this is doing to our body.
Yeah.
That we're going to damage ourselves if we continue to do this for no reason, because it does. I don't care who has a predisposition to it or not. A lot of the reason, and people might disagree with me, but the main reason of why people drink is because it feels good, right? There is a very small population of people that drink because they love the flavor of the drink.
Yeah.
It is an acquired taste. We learn to drink it because we want to feel a different way and goofy and relaxed.
Yes.
But what other way can we feel that stuff and still feel connected? Because I can't go into a room anymore if I don't want to be in there, because if I have to self-medicate to put up with somebody, I'm in the wrong room. I'm in the wrong party, right? And so it's like, I can't change who I am because I have to show up, because that's not where it stops, right? So it's like, I am who I am, and I'm not going to get drunk in order to feel like I have to tolerate or for somebody to like me. I need to go where birds of a feather flock together. What are non-drinkers doing? Where do they hang out? Well, they're human beings just like us. We're all the same people, right? We're just doing things that are adding value to our life. So if I go and pick up a kickboxing class, I'm going to find people who aren't drinking at home hiding. They're living their life and they're loving their life. And so I'm going to gravitate towards that by just choosing not to drink that day.
Yes. I love that. Oh my gosh, yes. Because I'm just like sitting here thinking about my own experience. And, you mentioned most people, like a high majority of people do not drink because they enjoy the flavor of it. So my drink of choice was always a cocktail because I had to like put a bunch of stuff in it. But then I would, be at these events or these places where everyone else is drinking, and I would, because it was so sugary and it didn't have that, harsh flavor to it, you can drink it a lot faster. Well, I always felt like I needed to have a drink in my hand. Like I couldn't, when it was over, like I needed another one because I needed to have that drink in my hand. And so also just circling back to what you had mentioned before, if you bring your own drink, then you don't have to worry about, what happens when you're out of one, or, having that urge to like, well, let me just go get this drink. Two, I just think that that's such good, important information that we all can benefit from.
Yeah. And, I think it's really important too. It's like, like I said earlier, not everybody has to have a story like mine in order to change their relationship with alcohol. And it's like, I try to remember, like, I am never mom shaming. That's never my hope. My hope is to normalize sobriety and to be pro sobriety, not anti-drinking, right?
Yeah.
Because the first thing you'll hear is, well, this isn't my problem, this is your problem. And this is a public health crisis is what it is. And the pandemic is showing that, is that we're finding these tools. And so, yeah, you're right. This is my issue, but I'm asking for your support because I choose not to drink doesn't mean that I think that you're a raging alcoholic or that you're
Right.
below me or that you can't manage your booze. If you can have a nice cocktail and you can be appropriate and you are, not doing it for the wrong reasons that's hurting your family and yourself, great, drink. I give you a freaking virtual high five. I think
Yeah.
that that is amazing. I wish I could do it. I can't. I've learned to accept that, and that's okay. I'm a person who can't drink, but unfortunately, I used to think that was a bad thing, like a life sentence. I reframe that and say, you know what, Michelle? One thing you can't do is drink. That leaves endless possibilities of things that you can do. Get over yourself and pack your mocktails and freaking live your best life. And so it's so important to remember
Yes.
that. Like, enjoy your drink. Just remember why you're doing it and be mindful of why you're doing it and how you feel because it does creep up on you when you least expect it. So it's just important to always say that there's nothing wrong with drinking. It's just a very slippery slope, especially when things start to happen in your life, like you lose a job or you lose a loved one. And it becomes a little bit more because society says, Michelle, you just lost your mom. It's
Yeah.
okay to drink.
Hmm.
You're grieving,
Hmm.
right? Well, I'm going to continue to grieve down the bottle that has no solution once I get to the bottom of it. And I'm not really doing the work, right? I'm
Right.
avoiding the work. And so now I've got more problems because I'm starting to feel dependent. I haven't started the bereavement process. Now I have postpartum depression. Now I'm too opinionated and too stern. I can tell anybody to go take an antidepressant because it's amazing that they can do that. But I didn't want to do that
Right.
until I needed to do that. And it's like these are tools that are available to you. And stop the stigma, stop shaming yourself, and utilize the resources that you need in order to get back to where you are. You're not damaged, you're not broken. You are having a really hard time. Life has thrown you a lot of stuff and you are responsible for maintaining it and fixing it and continuing to thrive. So how are you going to do that? Right? It's,
Yeah.
I'm going to do it the best way I know how to do.
Yeah. Most definitely. I think, I just want to highlight, what you said about doing the work and how alcohol, along with a lot of other drugs, is this mask. You take it, you drink it, it masks the problem that you have right now, it numbs the feelings. But what happens when you wake up in the morning? What happens later on in the day when you're at work and those emotions and those feelings and those thoughts come back to you? It doesn't make the problem go away. And so doing good coping, there's good coping skills, doing good work, and being comfortable with the fact that it's going to be uncomfortable for a little while. So for you, when were going through, when you kicked the booze and you decided you were done with it, like what were some of the physical things that you did to help you cope with the things that you were coping with? Because, and I could be wrong, but a lot of people who have postpartum depression, at least for me, I had postpartum depression, but I also had depression before that. And so it was like, how do I cope with that? Sometimes if you have, postpartum depression, it can go into, I guess, like full blown, like full blown. I don't like that word, but like it can be more of depression and not necessarily just postpartum because it doesn't go away. So what are some healthy coping skills that you do to help yourself work through those things?
Right. I think it's really important to know your body and to know like what season of life you're in and give yourself grace. And for me, it was giving myself permission to go to my doctor and
Yeah.
say, you know what, I'm struggling. I don't have any clue on what this is. All I know is that I should be the most happiest in my life right now. And I'm the worst. I'm the saddest. I can't barely get out of bed. And so saying it out loud and asking for help and saying, okay, Michelle, I'm going to put you on an antidepressant. And I had every reason in the book why I didn't want to do it. And he goes, anybody who comes in here saying what you've told me automatically goes on an antidepressant. And what he told me, it blew me away, was I do this to everybody, Michelle, because if you're dead, I can't help you. And I was like, wow, like he cares enough about me and about me living to do the right thing, right? And so me starting that and starting to have that little bit of hope that my life matters, I am important, even though I know this, I'm in this rut of feeling like, what's important? What's my value? Why am I here? And again, people won't realize that until they're in this place of just complete despair and feeling like they're unworthy of everything and that they're failing at everything. And so that was one of the first big decisions that I made, is just getting really clear on, this is a season, Michelle. You were in a season of life where you're in the trenches, you're a new mom, and it's freaking hard. It is so hard, and it is not going to last forever. So find some friends that you can talk to. Stop being a meticulous people pleaser and a perfectionist, and let people take care of your baby while you take a shower. Tell them, I don't want a bottle of wine. I want a coffee. I don't care if it's from a rinky dinks, not Starbucks and it's cold.
Yeah.
Like, start making small changes. You know what? The beauty of breath is literally, it's free and it's the best therapy for you. Get your ass outside, get out in nature, soak up that vitamin D. It is, again, free. It's the best dopamine IV drip on the planet.
Yes.
That's it. Integrate small little habits, right? The Atomic Habits book is like the best book ever. Small book, like small changes, small daily habits that change. Because where I was doing was, I'm only really drinking between the hours of like 5 and 7 are like my triggering times, right? So that's still 22 hours I didn't have to focus on drinking. So this goes back to like the sober curious people. What can I do for those 2 hours to make sure I don't drink? I'm going to declare my house alcohol free. And if I can't, it's going to be in the garage, or my husband's going to keep it outside or something, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I am going to not make meals that are stressing me out that no one's eating. I am going to detach and go upstairs for 5 minutes, take off my work clothes, get my comfy clothes on, take a couple breaths while I go from corporate America mom to now crazy lunatic. Kids are screaming, they're starving, everyone's upset. That hour is just, those 2 hours were horrible. So I'm going to not do things that are going to stress me out, right? Listen to personal development on my way home. Yes. I'm going to grab a LaCroix right out of the fridge right before I walk into the freaking war zone of my kids, right? And so those were some of like the little tips and tricks where it was like, I'm just going to switch the drink I have in my hand. I'm just going to walk the long way to check my mail. I need to nourish my soul. And as being a mom that has 2 jobs and is doing all the things, I don't have time to go to the spa. I don't have time to go sit at a kickboxing class, or else I'm not choosing to make that a priority, right? So it's like, what pockets of time do I have to take care of Michelle? Because if she's not well, nobody's going to be happy. So that was like some of the first things that I started to do was, what's free, what is available to me, and how much am I willing to take down some of my guards to say, you know what, I can't do this alone. And this isn't cheating the system. These are tools that are available to me that I deserve. And I'm not weak by any means. I'm just learning that depending on this crutch is becoming problematic in my life. So when I do get sad because I'm going to lose people and I'm going to have a crummy day and I'm going to get stuck in traffic, what are other tools that I can say, instead of reaching for a glass of wine, even though I want it so dang bad and I can have it later, I am going to do some breath work. I'm going to go do 20 jumping jacks. I am going to go put on a personal development. I'm going to chug a seltzer. What are these 5 things that you're going to do? And if you're still thirsty for things you can't drink and you want that bottle of wine, do it. But give yourself permission. I always tell people, and I did this, I'd put like 5 things on an index card and I'd make myself do all of it, which is literally delay and distract.
Yes.
Because in 20 minutes, that urge is going to be gone. And 9 times out of 10, it started to work. It was just do all these other things first, because if you don't do these things that you once valued, like journal and call a friend, because I'm just going to get drunk in the closet. It's just easier and no one's going to know.
Right.
I'm going to make myself connect and feel good and hydrate my body before I go into self-destructive mode.
Oh my gosh, you're just so full of so much advice and actual steps. Like, these are all things that anyone can do. They're not hard. They're easy. And I think too, I just want to highlight starting small, especially if you're curious. What made you choose to really just tell your story? Why is it important that you tell people your story personally, but then also educate people?
Right. It's such a great question. What it comes down to is there are too many women dying for me to stay silent in my sobriety. That's That's what it is. I literally have worked for the Department of Corrections for 2 decades. I wasn't able to have pictures of my family. I wasn't able to have social media. I lived so much of my childhood and my adulthood in secrecy, in hiding, in isolation to protect my family from, inmates and that type of thing and
Right.
threats and all of that. And so I was dying inside. I was literally killing myself because I was so secretive. And I knew that I couldn't be alone in this. There was no way that I was the only person struggling. And so when I started talking about it and making that decision, I'm like, I've already been to the hospital. I've already had CPS involvement. Like, it's all public information at some level. Like, this
Right.
is keeping me sick. Like, I want to be a redemption story. I want to be the person that says, you know what, you're not alone. And I need people to tell me that I'm not alone too. And so when I started using Instagram as like a way of like a diary to document my journey, people were like, oh my gosh, I did that. I hid alcohol in the bushes. Like, I left my kids
Yeah.
alone. Like, my husband's yelling at me sleeping on the couch. Like, my friends are telling me I'm drinking a little bit too much. I think I'm unhappy with my job, but I don't want to leave government jobs. And so I just drink. Right. And so it's like all these reasons that we would justify. People were like, Michelle, I get it. This is me. What do I do? And that just evolved into this movement of, you know what, we can say this isn't adding value to our life and we need to take a break or just learn to say, you know what, no, put up some rules around it because we know where the path of destruction leads us. And we don't have to be in that generation that says this anymore, that we're going to
Yeah.
keep going until we have to tap out. Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so just by me feeling that that was the biggest piece of accountability for me. Because if I'm not going to be a 12 stepper and go into a program, I need a sense of community. I need sisterhood. I need to know that I can tell you the wildest craving I had, and you're going to be like, oh my God, girl,
Me
this
too.
podcast,
Yeah.
yes, this podcast and this new seltzer that just came out, like this new LaCroix flavor, it is delicious. I got you. Like, let's just do this
Yeah.
together. And
Uh,
it's so super awesome because it's just like, I see too many moms dropping like flies, and you don't ever think it's going to be you. And you wouldn't believe the people who were hiding it with a disease or this condition that is just, I can't tell anybody. And a lot of them are moms and a lot of them are professionals. I, work with doctors and pilots and lawyers. If they knew those kids were driving their kids on a school bus or the principal, I mean, this disease is not, nobody is immune to this. So let's address this from the very beginning, that it's just being mindful, period. That's it. Just don't let yourself slip through the cracks of this is never going to happen to me. Of just let's make sure it doesn't happen to you, right?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I want people to know that you know what, they can drink, that's great. If they see that it's not adding value to their life, but they're feeling like they're getting stuck in this like friend circle that's telling them they have to, or they just have these insecurities, that's why we can have these groups and these sisterhood and these pieces of community that we can bounce ideas off each other. We don't have to be in the bottom of a basement, doing this stuff if we're not there, or if that's not how we want to choose to recover or get curious. That there's so many pathways to recovery that we can do whatever we want. We can, do a spiritual journey. We can go to therapy.
Yes.
It can be anything, and we can make it fun.
Oh my gosh, yes. I just, I've had the privilege of speaking with quite a few women who are sober, and one of the things that they talk about was, the moment that they decided to open up an Instagram that was dedicated to this platform, or even just going into those communities, like how much having someone else do this with you makes it easier, but also reminds us that we're not alone in our struggles, in our stories, because I almost feel like I can say everybody has a little bit of story that they can connect with. Even if you're not someone that struggles with alcohol, there's probably part of Michelle's story that resonates with you. So I think it's so important that we, just communicate. Like, so much can change if we communicate.
Right. When we talk about like, the gateway drugs and all of that. And I think honestly, deep down what the gateway drug is it's trauma, it's pain.
Yeah.
It is the hard emotional stuff that gets in the way, that we have this void. And if we don't learn to heal it, confront it, and go through that process, we're going to self-medicate the process. And so when we're looking at, and I think this is like the best piece of advice I would go back and tell my younger self is that when you have these really hard things that are happening in your life, like a financial hardship or your partner's deployed to war, you lose a family member, how are you going to be supported and what options are available to you during that really hard season of life? Because that's when we start using drinking, for example, as a way to quote unquote cope. That's where the risky, dangerous behavior starts to begin because we're using this for an emotional tool because we don't feel well or we're not spiritually aligned. That's the stuff that's scary. Is that's the stuff that I started reaching for that external solution to
Right.
the internal problem. So if you're having a drink once a week with buddies or one glass of wine a night at dinner, great. You know, but just be mindful when bad things like you lose your job or your kid breaks their ankle, like just whatever, when life starts to get super heavy, that's when it's really important to turn inward and say, is this the best beverage choice I can pick tonight? Right? Am I doing this because I'm hurting emotionally or mentally?
Yeah. Yeah.
And think about what other thing you could do just for a moment to feel it, because sitting in the discomfort is where the magic happens, right? It's like in our darkness, that magic is in there and we can pull it out. And that's why my story is so important, because they say the mess, you know, find the message in the mess. It's
Yeah.
like in my darkness, in my most vulnerable, awful, like, I don't want anyone to know this. That has been my story, my voice, because people aren't ready to use their voice yet. I needed to
Mm.
hear somebody like me when I was struggling, right? And so I want people to know that me too. I've been through this. You don't have to
Yeah.
do this either. And this is what you can do instead. So I think it's just so important our voices and to recover out loud and to just say, you know what? I don't got all my stuff together. This is what I do when I get
Yep.
stressed out. I listen
Yep.
to this, I drink this, let's do this, you know, and it goes to like mom shaming, like on the internet. Like,
Yeah.
you know, somebody's like, oh, I had a horrible day and my kids are driving me batty. I get it, right? And so she's like, oh my God, I had 3 extra glasses of wine. Instead of shame, I'm going to say, girl, I see you. It was a shit show today. I
Yeah.
just took a 2 mile walk and just sat with myself. And you know what? Both of us are going to get through it. So I provided an alternative without saying drinking's bad.
Oh, I love
Or,
that. Yes.
you know, it's like, I got you. And I did this too. And I just listened to this really cool Mel Robbins podcast or something just to give her that little nudge or nugget that says, you know what, I got through the same thing. We just did it a little bit differently. And
Uh,
we're going to be okay.
mm.
Tomorrow's going to be better, you know?
Yes. I love, oh my gosh, I love that. Yes. What would be the best piece of advice that you would give a younger version of yourself who is in this thick of struggle if you had a few moments with them?
In the thick of it, you
Yeah.
know? I mean, it sounds really cliche, but to tell them that they're not alone.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with them. They're not failing at life because their body's rejecting something that shouldn't be in their body to begin with. And I think the quicker that they can say, you know, I'm really struggling with whatever's going on in my life, that we can find an alternative to that, to be able to not have to rely on external solutions for something that's never going to work. So just to be who you are and be proud of who you are, and don't hide behind a bottle. And if life's really freaking hard, let's address that. You know, do we
Yeah.
need to lose the job? Do we need to ditch the partner? You know, do we need to get a nanny? Do we need to get a house cleaner? Like, start delegating. You know, it's like, start, you don't have to be superwoman. We're not Elastigirl. We have these expectations that we're supposed to do everything
Yeah.
that our grandmas and moms did and do it with a freaking smile on our face. And all of us are freaking drowning. So tell Michelle, you're not supposed to do this alone. This is really this hard. And how
Yeah.
can you delegate? How can you ask for help and not get attached to the expectation that if you delegate to your partner, those lines in the carpet aren't going to look pretty like you do it. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? If you want to do takeout, do takeout. Don't be mad at yourself because your dead mother's shaming you for not having a hot meal on the table every single night that your kids take 2.5 seconds to eat and half of it ends up on the floor.
Right.
Like, just don't try to be everything to everyone because you will fail. And it's not
Yes.
worth it.
I think that like whole like toxic super mom, like, you know,
It's not real.
it's
Real
not
life.
real. Yeah, well I remember I had my ex, would always just talk about how his mom would always, she worked a job, but then she also had like home cooked like 4-course meals when they got home. And I'm like, well, that's not going to be me. Like, I can't do that. Like, my brand, I'm sure she probably was not happy during that too. But yeah, I think it's that whole glorification of like what is expected of a mom. And even if you are a stay-at-home mom, like a lot of people think too, for women that don't have quote unquote day jobs, that, there's this level of, responsibility and expectations that should be done. And you can't do it all. Like, we shouldn't have to do it all. And so I think it's important, like you said, asking for help.
Absolutely. And that's
Yeah.
when I crumbled too, was when I took time off for my second child. And I was like looking back, I'm like, work was actually a vacation. It
Yeah.
really was. You have adult conversation, you actually get to put some makeup on,
Yep.
and you get the commute, which is decompressing you,
Yeah.
already. It's like I used to be like, oh, the booze was, what helped me decompress. No, it was crossing state lines. It was listening to personal development. It was actually talking to a friend on speakerphone while no kids were in the car to like, because of course your kids just come out of nowhere whenever you get on
Yeah.
the phone. So it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
text me like a normal person because I can't talk to you until they're like 18. But it
Right.
was like, that was the stuff that was literally the magic. It was never the booze. And I gave it so much credit. It was never the booze.
Yeah.
And so just those little things are just, they're just
They're
we
so
just don't
great.
slow down enough to say, I was going batty at home. I was like, I don't
Yeah.
have adult conversation. If I watch Mickey Mouse Clubhouse again, I swear to God.
I'm
Like,
going to
it was
lose
just,
it.
yeah. And it was like, I had too much pride to ask for a babysitter, and
Yeah.
then my husband would be like, what'd you do for the day? And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I feel like a horrible person because
Yeah.
how I contribute now doesn't equate to how I was raised and how it had before as a financial contribution. And now it's like, I don't know, I clean people's butts and cleaned the toilet and made some meals.
Yeah.
It's
Kept
a
everyone
different,
alive. Yeah.
yeah, it's just a different version of you when you're just contributing in a different way. But I think it's so important for the moms who are listening to just be like, you know what, you are valued, you are adding to everyone's life. This is really this hard, and you're in the thick of it, and it does get better because we're like, is this how it's going to be forever? I'm going to
Forever.
have no friends. I'm going to have to do this. No, this is a season of motherhood, and you're going to transition right when you master this one. It goes into a new one.
Yep.
And just buckle up because, people would say, oh, it goes so fast. I'm like, I swear, if I hear that again, like, enjoy it. It goes
Yeah.
quickly. It's like right now, I want it to go really freaking
Yeah.
quick
Yeah.
because I hear you, but I am dying inside. And so it's like, you have to find those moments to take care of yourself and get a babysitter and just be by yourself. And you feel like you're abandoning your kid and that you don't have the money. Well, you know what? You find the money for booze, you find the money to go do other things. You can shift your money mindset and your objections and just freaking take care of yourself. That if I could go back and say anything, I was just always so afraid to leave my kids. And,
Yeah.
it was like, Michelle, you are losing yourself.
Yeah.
Who are you going to be besides your kids' mom? What do you like? I don't even know what I like to drink. I don't even know what I like to eat. I don't even know what my favorite color is anymore.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not normal and that's not okay. So it's just buckle up. It's not going to be forever, and you are not alone. And this is a season of life, and it's going to shift. It's going to get better.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So much of that. And so your book, can you tell me a little bit about your book? And I've seen that pre-orders are available now. What can we expect from this?
Yes. So it is for women who want to be able to start to get either sober curious, start their journey, whatever it is. It's kind of like dieting, right? So it's
Yeah.
like you do it, but then you don't beat yourself up in the shame cycle for a million years. You just keep going, right? So it's like documenting and journaling what your journey is and how it continues to develop. And so empowering people with motivation, with tips, kind of what we did in our conversation of just,
Yeah.
remember, it's like I have a client who she looked back at a book on Amazon that she bought 5 years ago. And she's like, I've been on this journey for 5 years. And I'm like, that's really rad. And she's like, no, that's horrible. Like, I'm shaming myself because I haven't gotten it right.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what you are? You're a person who doesn't give up. That's what you are. You've been doing this for 5 years, and look at this journey. Look at these trends. Look at these patterns. These are habits. Every other week is payday. That's a trigger for you. Money is a trigger for you. Your ex is a trigger for you because every other week you have, this other family has mom stays at home. Husband's gone with the kids. That's a trigger. She wouldn't have gotten divorced. She would still have her kids, right? So she's beating herself up with drinking. So you're going to see some of these habits and these behaviors while you document and you journal your intentions, what you're grateful for, what your triggers are, what are those 5 resources going to be when you are starting to get thirsty for things you can't drink, and to have a place to reflect
Yeah.
is the goal behind it.
Oh my gosh. I can't wait to check that out. I will definitely add that to my need list. Oh my gosh. So, and yes, and I will link all of that information in the show notes. So if you guys are interested in checking out that book, as well as your Instagram and your website so that they can follow your journey, but also find a community of, there's some people that are in your comments, like they are just so supportive of each other and just finding that community. It's beautiful. But yeah, it'll definitely help along your way. So I do have one question that I want to ask you. We like to talk about stepping into our power and not thinking of that as a bad thing. How would you describe, or what would you think of the type of power that you try to step into every day?
Ooh, step into my power. I think it's just my magic, I believe, is being of service and helping other people. So every day I get up knowing that I am going to add value to somebody else's life. And that's like my superpower. I'm like this service oriented person that fuels me and helps me make the world become a better place by just having other people see their magic and know that they're going to fight for whatever it is that they're fighting for in that day, and that they're not alone. And for some reason, I just have this ability to just gravitate and allow people to make these communities like the Instagram community that I've built,
Yeah.
and that's a special gift that I have that I truly like pull from, is that I don't know, I have this ability just to connect with people and bring out their magic.
Yeah. Ugh, I love it. I love everything you're doing. All of your, like I said before, your Instagram is phenomenal. You have so much information, educational, relatability, and it's just a great place to jump on. So if you guys are not already following Michelle, I highly recommend it. But thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to have these conversations that matter, because I know that at least one person is going to hear this podcast that's going to touch their life in a way
Yeah.
that they can make some decisions moving forward. And this is what it's all about. It's just normalizing anything it is that we want to do, and we don't have to go against, we don't have to just hang out with where society tells us to be if it's not the right fit, and it's not adding value to our life. So these conversations are changing people's lives and keeping people alive and empowering people to make a change, or to at least look at their life and see if a change needs to be made, to know that, what, there's other people that are sober curious too, and that's a pretty cool place to start.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you all for supporting us with your listens today. I want to thank my guests again so much for sharing their powerful story of transformation with us. If you are interested in connecting with them or giving them a follow, I have linked all of their information in the show notes below. Don't forget to check out that book. If you personally felt connected to today's story and you would like to check out the art that goes along with it, you can do so on our website at iampower.club. Also, limited edition prints will be available for you to purchase as your own reminder to step into your power. All of the art sales go to support the podcast and help us to bring you powerful stories each and every week. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at I Am Power Club, YouTube at Jessica James. And if you found value in this episode, please let us know by giving us a like and sharing us with a friend. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss next week's episode of I Am Power. See you then.